Now just try to follow this. The crisis that seems to press upon you is not, in and of itself, the difficulty. The real turning point is the instant the mind begins to whirl, to project a future rescue, to demand a tomorrow answer, and then to feed on its own agitation as if fear were wisdom. Please remember this point. The spiral is not your enemy. It is the bell ringing in consciousness, saying, "Stop moving outward and forward. Come home to what already is." If you can hear that bell and heed it, the entire direction of your life turns. Right there, not next week, not when conditions improve, not tomorrow, now. We are speaking tonight, not to the world that wants another pep talk or a temporary dose of comfort, but to students, to disciples who desire principle, who must have a way they can count on, and not a mood that may or may not carry them through the night. We as disciples learn to recognize signals. The spiral is a holy signal. It announces that we have slipped from presence into postponement, from being into bargaining. Oh, no, no, no. We are not to bargain with life, with God, with ourselves. Give me this, and I will be at peace. Peace does not come as a traded favor. It is the very substance of God as being recognized. So I offer you a compact doorway, not as a charm, not as a magic syllable, but as a way of stepping out of motion into presence. 4 words. God is here. Why so brief? Because when the mind is loud, instruction must be simple. Because when fear shouts, we do not argue, we behold. Autosuggestion attempts to pile phrases upon fear in order to drown it out. Realization does not compete. Realization sees. Autosuggestion is the mind talking to itself, trying to outshout its own echo. Realization is silence, recognizing reality. And in that recognition, the echo fades, because no wall remains to bounce it back. Please remember, there is a vast difference. Actually, there is no relationship between the two. They are entirely separate and distinct operations. Autosuggestion seeks to overwrite fear with a stronger thought. Realization discloses that fear has no source in God, and therefore no authority in you. One tries to change the picture on the screen. The other recognizes the light. One postpones. When I have managed my thoughts sufficiently, I shall be safe. The other abides. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. Therefore, when the spiral starts, and you know the feeling, that tightening, that quickening pulse, that inner clock racing, let it be your alarm to remember. Not to brace, not to calculate, not to reach outward for tomorrow's answer, but to rest into presence with these 4 words, softly, honestly. God is here. That is our orientation. That is our beginning. In that instant of consent, the search ceases, the running stops, and peace, which is not given but is God, announces itself where you are. Now just try to follow this. We must begin with a cleansing. These 4 words are not a positive affirmation to prop you up for another hour. They are not self-hypnosis, not a rhythmic pounding on the mind in hopes that repetition will numb fear. Oh, no, no, no. We are not trying to lull ourselves. We are trying to awaken. Please remember this. Autosuggestion seeks to manipulate a mood. Realization reveals a fact. One tinkers with feelings. The other beholds being. Do not bargain with them. If I say it 50 times, perhaps God will notice and come. That is not prayer. That is superstition. God is here is never an invitation to a far-off presence. It is the recognition that the only presence there is cannot be absent. Either God is or God is not. Either omnipresence is present, or we are worshiping absence and calling it reality. There is no middle ground, no twilight where God half arrives when we feel worthy or when conditions improve. Actually, there is no relationship between a God who might come and the living God as being. They are entirely separate and distinct notions, and only one is truth. Please remember the moral charge in this. To treat God as a delayed helper is to place time, distance, and circumstance above spirit. It says, when my body complies, when the market turns, when the apology arrives, then God can do his work. Oh no. God is not under the law of clocks and calendars. God is not waiting outside your threshold for permission from a symptom or a bank balance. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. To make conditions the governor of presence is to dishonor God and imprison yourself in your own measurements. So we change our language, because language discloses consent. We do not say, God, fix this. We say, God is here. And the this must take its rightful place beneath that fact. The pain, the invoice, the argument, none of these become our master terms. They may announce themselves loudly, but we do not confer authority. We are not denying appearance. We are denying its ultimacy. We are consenting to reality, not to report. And as we consent, the mind stops reaching for a future rescue and rests in a present presence. Take this into your heart. God is here does not change God, does not summon a deity from a distance, does not negotiate with fate. It changes what you are consenting to as real. It changes the axis of your attention from effect to cause, from picture to light. And in that simple rectification, quiet, honest, unforced, the problem begins to lose the borrowed power we lent it, because presence reclaims its place as the fact. Thank you. Now just try to follow this. If we are to have anything we can count on, we must come to principle, not poetry, not uplift alone. The principle is this inversion which to the world sounds backward, but to the disciple is the cornerstone. God does not give peace. God is peace. God does not send presence. God is presence. God is not a power we import to battle another power. God is the only being, and in the allness of that being, there is no second presence to oppose, frighten, or delay. Please remember this point, because all that follows depends upon it. When you say, softly, honestly, God is here, you are not asking for a condition to arrive. You are consenting that being, peace itself, is the fact where you stand. Now, why do we call this principle and not poetry? Because if God is omnipresent, there cannot be a corner in which God is partly absent, awaiting your mood to improve. If omnipresence is fact, then the only absence is the mind's search. The only distance is the reaching. It is the seeking that postpones, never God. I am with you always is not a promise to be fulfilled when weather clears. It is a statement of being that does not come and go with your breath. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Where is that Spirit? Here. Then liberty is here. Peace is here. Presence is here. Oh, no, 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 not as something to be summoned, but as the very substance of this moment recognized. This is how you may test if you are resting in principle or drifting on hope. Principle produces continuing harmonies of life, quietly, naturally, as a tree that bears after its kind. Not because you forced a result, but because peace recognized is peace expressed. Hope and luck give a flash today and failure tomorrow. Principle is count-onable because it is law, not lottery. And we as students, we in this work, know that when peace is established inwardly, forms find their proper order outwardly, not as miracle, but as effect. When you can count on inner communion, you will notice that you can count on outer sufficiency, not as a bargain struck with God, but as the natural result of not living apart from being. Now the resistance. Let us face it. The mind says, tell me how it works. Show me the visible mechanism, the timeline, the guarantee in form. It craves a method that can be photographed, a procedure that can be clocked, a promise that can be signed. Oh no. Spirit does not operate under the lens of matter. Spirit is the life of what appears without becoming an object among objects. Spirit is invisibility and immediacy. It is presence as being, not an item delivered on schedule. And so your satisfaction must shift from grasping a plan to resting in presence. Be still and see if this is not so. When agitation is released into God as being, the mind's alarms subside, the body follows peace, and supply takes its rightful, unfrightened courses. Do you see the mercy of this? If God is peace, then peace is not an outcome to obtain. It is a presence to recognize. If God is presence, then you are not poor in presence awaiting your portion. You are in presence, and presence is in you. The discipline, then, is singular. Cease consenting to a future peace, and consent to God as peace now. Not to make anything happen, but to acknowledge what is. I am with you always. Where the Spirit is, liberty is. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. Now just try to follow this. Not tomorrow. Now is not a slogan to stir you up. It is the only doorway conscience and spirit can recognize together. Please remember, fear always hides a bargain with time. It whispers, when this changes, then I will be at peace. When I feel different, when the report comes, when I have a better meditation, then. That postponement is the bondage. The chain is not the condition. The chain is the bargain. We tie our peace to a clock and call it prudence. Oh, no, no, no. That is not prudence. That is captivity to a calendar of our own making. Why is now the entire doorway? Because God is not in time. If God were in time, we could wait 5 minutes for God to arrive and set a chair for him. But omnipresence, if it is presence at all, is not future. It is. Pure being has no tense. Therefore, recognition of God cannot be in time either. Recognition is now, or it is imagination. Please remember that. Every time you say, soon, you have admitted absence and promised yourself a mirage. Every later is a confession that something other than God occupies here. And we as disciples cannot make that confession and find freedom. Now let me show you the subtle trap that visits even faithful students. We postpone under a spiritual label. We say, when the house is quiet, I will practice. When my mood lifts, then I will know God. When I can get to the chair and close my eyes, then the presence will come. Oh no, that is the old bargain dressed in a robe. Mood does not authorize God. Silence does not unlock omnipresence. Better days are not holier days. God is as present in the clatter as in the cloister, because God is presence, not ambience. So here is the practice. One thing, simple, and it will not wait upon your feelings. Stop negotiating with time. Right where you are, as you are, relax. Relax both mentally and physically, in the assurance that here and now, God is. Let the shoulders drop. Let the planned timeline go. We are not pushing for an effect. We are consenting to a fact. Rest one breath in the word here. Rest the next breath in the awareness is. And do not argue with noise or symptom or schedule. They have nothing to say to omnipresence. As you do this, quietly, honestly, you will notice that the mind's appetite for then loses its glamour. It grows embarrassing to keep promising yourself a later God when presence is felt now. Peace does not arrive. It is uncovered. And remember, peace is not the prize for waiting well. Peace is the nature of God as being recognized. Therefore, say it without strain and without haste. God is here. God is now. God is, and that's all. Thank you. Now just try to follow this. Dissolution is not improvement. Improvement still concedes a power to the condition, and then tries to coax God to make it better. Oh, no, no, no. We are not using spirit to adjust appearances. We are withdrawing our consent from the claim that appearances have authority over being. Please remember this. God is here is not spoken to change anything out there. It is yielded to so that something in here, your consent, your allegiance, changes. And when allegiance turns from effect to cause, from picture to light, the picture can do only one thing: conform or fade. But the work was not changing the picture. The work was beholding the light. Now the inner sequence is simple, and if you will rest in it, you can count on it. First, recognition. God is here. Not as a thought competing with the problem, but as a quiet opening to the fact of presence. Next, the noise begins to soften, not because you forced it, but because a greater fact takes the foreground of consciousness. The mind that was rehearsing outcomes, measuring symptoms, bargaining with time, finds it awkward to continue in the face of presence. Then peace. Yes, that strange, holy peace that passeth understanding announces itself. It is not earned, it is uncovered. And in that peace, functions ease, decisions clarify, forms return to order, not to reward you, but to mirror the state of consciousness that is no longer divided. This is the crux. You cannot serve two masters. Either consciousness is filled with the problem, or consciousness is filled with God. Actually, there is no relationship between the two states. They are entirely separate and distinct operations. One is fear organizing your hours. The other is presence governing your being. If you grant the problem first place and then try to slip God into the margins, you have preserved your jailer and asked the warden for a prettier cell. We as disciples cannot do that. We choose now which is real. We abide now in that choice. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. What then is error? Not a power to fight, not an entity to crush, but a claim, only a claim, to presence, to law, to cause. And a claim that has no cause is a shadow with no object. Bring a candle into a dark room and tell me what battle took place. None. The light did not argue. It revealed. So with realized presence. God is not a power over error. God is the presence before which error is not power at all. In that recognition, the claim collapses, not by combat, but by exposure. Now take this as a living demonstration. Fear rises. You feel the grip in the stomach, the narrative starting, the pictures assembling their parade. Do not analyze the fear. Do not confer intelligence on it by tracing its genealogy. Stop. One breath. God is here. Again, softer, not to convince, but to consent. God is here. Let the shoulders drop. Refuse the next thought that tries to barter for tomorrow. God is here. Stay with it, not tensely, not counting, until you notice the voice of fear losing its script. It will. It must. For it has no life apart from your consent. And when the consent returns to presence, fear has no theater in which to perform. Please remember this point and be comforted by it. The problem loses its seeming power when presence becomes the primary fact in consciousness. Not by your cleverness, not by a perfect sentence, but by the fact of God as being recognized here. From something to fix, you are lifted to nothing to fear. And in that altitude, the outer harmonies come in their time and way, not by decree, but by necessity. Rest there. God is here. My peace. My peace. Thank you. Now just try to follow this. There are only two architectures by which you can build a life. The world's method seeks security in conditions, better numbers, improved reports, agreeable forecasts. The disciples' method seeks security in God's present being, here, now, before any report, beneath every forecast. Actually, there is no relationship between these two foundations. They are entirely separate and distinct operations of consciousness. Please remember this point. As long as consciousness leans on fear for confirmation, it cannot rest in presence for freedom. You cannot ask fear to certify your safety and at the same time abide in God as your safety. It is one or the other. Divided reliance is subtle. Outwardly you may seem prayerful, but inwardly you are running a laboratory, praying while rehearsing catastrophe, saying, God is here, while watching the clock, scanning symptoms, refreshing the balance, demanding a sign to vindicate your prayer. Oh, no, no, no. That is not reliance. That is bargaining with your jailer and calling it spirituality. You cannot serve two masters. If fear remains your accountant, keeping the books, stamping each moment safe or unsafe, you have left the throne of your life in the hands of a clerk who knows only loss projections. We are not scolded for this. We are awakened from it. Please remember, the split is not in your words, but in your consent. Now then, do not mistake me. This decision is not about outer behavior. It is about inner foundation. You may take human footsteps, and you will, but right footsteps are the effect of reliance, not the substitute for it. The difference is everything. When fear commands, footsteps are hurried, breathless, disproportioned, seeking to wrest safety from forms. When presence governs, footsteps are quiet, apt, timely, arising from peace and therefore free of the fever to prove a point. We are not discarding wisdom. We are discarding panic as the governor of wisdom. The action that proceeds from realized presence carries presence with it. Therefore, it does not become a new altar to bow before. Please notice how divided allegiance keeps the problem alive. Fear says, "Show me a sign and I will relax." But the demand for signs enthrones the appearance as law. You are still asking the picture to validate the light. Can you see the reversal? As long as you measure peace by symptom, supply, or outcome, you have confessed that those are your masters, and God is the petitioner. Oh no, we reverse it. We enthrone presence as the fact, and let forms bear witness if they must, on their schedule, without our whip. Presence does not audition for the role of security. Presence is security. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. So choose, beloved. Quietly, honestly, right in the midst of whatever seems to clamor. Take your seat in being. One breath. God is here. Let that be first, not eventually, not once forms agree, but first. From there, let the day be written. If a call is to be made, it will be without trembling. If a bill is to be paid, it will be without the theater of dread. If a conversation is to occur, it will be free of the demand to extract apology as proof of your safety. Presence first. Footsteps follow. Keep the reliance single. Refuse the second master. Refuse to borrow certainty from fear's ledger. Please remember this and be strengthened by it. Our method as disciples is not a technique to control life. It is a consent to life. We rest in presence for freedom, and we allow the world its weather without letting weather define our sky. Make the choice often. Make it now. Make it gently, but make it whole. God is here. My peace. My peace. Thank you. Thank you. Now just try to follow this. We have spoken of principle. Now let us walk it. 3 scenes, the same doorway each time, because one realized presence meets every category of trouble by removing the root. Fear's claim to reality. Please remember the steps and do not complicate them. Pause. Relax. Inwardly consent to presence. Let the pictures fade without wrestling. The standard of evidence is not a sudden shift in outward weather. It is the immediate fruit of peace. Outer adjustments come as effect, not as prize. First, the health fear. You know the script the mind writes. What if this spreads? What if the report is worse? What if this is the beginning of the end? And with each what if, the body tightens to obey its storyteller. Oh, no, no, no. We do not argue with the script. We do not edit it. We do not beg God to fix matter. We pause. Right there, even with the pulse up, we relax both mentally and physically in the assurance, God is here. Not a counterthought, but a consent. God as life, not a power coming to battle decay, but the very being of life present as presence. I am the life, not afar, but here. Breathe once in here. Again in is. And as pictures parade, hospital corridors, grim faces, let them pass without signing for the delivery. You are not the projector. You are beholding light. In a minute, in a few, the quiver subsides. Peace that passeth understanding edges in. The body often follows, yes, functions calm under government of peace. But hear me, that is effect. The healing that counts, that you can count on, is this communion. God is the health of thy countenance, because God is the life here. Second, the money panic. The ledger appears to decree lack as law. The numbers shout, too little, too late. The mind scrambles to borrow, to juggle, to plead for a rescue tomorrow. Actually, there is no relationship between panic and provision. They are entirely separate and distinct. Supply is not an event. God is supply as presence. So again, pause. Drop the shoulders. Withdraw your worship from columns and clocks. Softly, God is here. We are not trying to hypnotize a deposit into being. We are consenting to being as sufficiency. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. Where is that Lord? Here. Then fullness is here as law, as order, as right activity. Let the pictures of foreclosure and humiliation float by like yesterday's clouds. Do not wrestle. Behold. As peace returns, ideas come. Apt steps present. Unexpected channels open, in their time. But the sign you accept as proof is peace now. The rest are the shadows of peace on the wall of days. Third, the relationship storm. The lips itch to argue, to force apology, to compose the perfect sentence that will pin the other to the mat. Oh no, that is the worship of personal control, and it breeds only more weather. Pause. Relax. Inwardly yield the throne. God is here. One presence, one mind, one love governing. Not two egos battling for air. Refuse the next rehearsed retort. Let it pass unspent. Consent to the presence that is harmony itself. My peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth. Stay until the heat cools. Then, if words are given, they will be simple and clean. If silence is given, it will be full, not withholding. Often the outer temper calms, understanding dawns, or paths part without violence. But again, the disciple's evidence is inner government restored. Outer accord is its natural echo. Please remember this and make it your way. In health fear, money panic, relationship storm, the practice does not change because God does not change. Pause. Relax. Consent. Let images fade without your signature. Rest in the only presence there is. From that altitude, the world's demands shrink to their proper size, and forms, as they must, fall in line with the peace that reigns within. God is here. My peace. My peace. Now just try to follow this. There are moments, perhaps for some of you, many moments, when you repeat the words and the sea inside does not still. The pulse runs on, the breath is high, the mind keeps manufacturing scenes, and you say, "But I said it. I am saying it." And still no relief. Please remember this point. This is not failure. This is revelation. It is the gracious exposure of a quieter idol, the self-reliant mind attempting to make the words work as a tool, to evoke a feeling, to produce a sign. Oh, no, no, no. When the phrase becomes a lever and you are the engineer, the old bargain has simply put on a choir robe. Here is the paradox of humility, and I beg you to treasure it. Be grateful if in that moment you have no understanding, no sweetness, no light of your own. Why? Because that very emptiness is the doorway. I can of mine own self do nothing. Let it be literal. Do not dress it with pious language. Stand in it as fact. Blessed are the poor in spirit, not the cleverly equipped, not those with a large vocabulary of holy words, but those with nothing to trade. For when your understanding is confessed absent, His understanding, which is infinite, finds the clear field in which to be all. So correct the strain. Please remember, we are not forcing a quiet. We are not manufacturing a mood. We are not compelling a sensation to certify the prayer. We are simply returning to the fact. Presence is already established. God is not awaiting your improved technique to arrive. Omnipresence does not enter. Omnipresence is. Therefore, the practice is the dropping of effort, not the tightening of it. If you notice the forehead tensed, the breath measured, the inner ear straining for a voice, relax both mentally and physically in the assurance, God is here. Once, softly. Twice, gently. Not to convince, but to consent. Now then, make the surrender pivot. Say within, without drama and without despair, Father, I can of mine own self do nothing. And then cease doing. Do not rush to repair the sentence with a better one. Stay in the relinquishment and let the words become what they truly are. Listening, not talking. God is here is not a speech to the sky. It is a doorway into silence. Hold it open and step through. Hush the inner commentary that asks, is it working yet? Do not time the invisible. Do not weigh silence by sensation. Rest. If reassurance comes, it will come as its own peace, not as your achievement, my peace. If no feeling announces itself, do not leave the altar. Remain content that reality is without your certificate. Please remember this and let it free you. The words become power when you stop using them to control experience and let them open you to divine reassurance. Not tomorrow, not when the tremor ceases, but now, in the honest poverty that does not know what to do and therefore does not interfere. Then, very quietly, the government shifts. The problem may still chatter for a moment, but it has lost its throne. And sometimes, often, you will notice that after you have given up improving the prayer has prayed you. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. God is here. My peace. My peace. Thank you. Thank you. Now just try to follow this. There is a law we must honor if we would have this work be something you can count on and not merely admire. Enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. Please remember this. The closet is not architecture. It is an inner room of consent where no witness is invited but God. It is the sanctuary of silence where your allegiance is transferred from appearance to presence. Not isolation from people, but separation from the mental marketplace, the gossip of fear, the bargaining with time, the clamor for signs. Why secrecy? Because publicity weakens realization. Every time you narrate the problem, you invite agreement with it. You collect signatures on a lie. Each retelling grants the picture one more vote in your consciousness. Oh, no, no, no. We are not holding hearings to determine whether God is here. Likewise, to trumpet an early triumph is to hand the ego a flag and say, "March." Then you will spend tomorrow protecting your parade instead of resting in presence. Actually, there is no relationship between realized peace and personal boasting. They are entirely separate and distinct. One abides in God as being, the other seeks applause to certify itself. We as disciples cannot borrow strength from approval without losing strength in spirit. Now then, the practice. When the spiral begins, when the chest tightens and the mind starts recruiting a chorus, do not gather an audience for your fear. Do not post it. Do not phone 5 friends to describe each shade and angle of the terror. That is not comfort. That is multiplication. Please remember, turn inward. Shut the door. One breath. Relax both mentally and physically in the assurance, God is here. Say it once, softly. Say it again only if it is consent, not performance. Let the Father who seeth in secret meet you there. The open reward is not first a changed report. It is the present peace that passeth understanding. From that peace, right words, right steps, right adjustments flow in their time as effect, not as the prize you wrung from heaven, but as the quiet echo of heaven recognized. Secrecy is spiritual hygiene, not isolation. We are not hiding from truth. We are hiding the holy work from argument, sympathy, and counter-suggestion. A tender seed cannot survive a windy field. Early realizations are tender. They are seedlings of eternity in the soil of your attention. Keep them warm. Keep them quiet. Keep your troubles bottled up inside, not as denial, but so that the Father can see them and know them without the meddling of 100 human verdicts. And when grace has borne its fruit, you will find that the reward appears openly, without your campaigning, as forms conform to the peace that has taken its rightful throne. Tie this to our mantra. God is here is most potent when it is not performed, but lived. Not a phrase to exhibit, not a badge to pin in public, but an atmosphere you carry like a fragrance that needs no announcement. Make it your discipline. Morning and night, enter the closet for a few unhurried minutes. Through the day, many small returns, one breath, one consent, without commentary. Keep the lips closed on the work and let presence speak by results, not reports. My peace. My peace. God is, and that's enough to know. God is. That's all. Thank you. Thank you. Now just try to follow this. We have walked a road together tonight, from the spiral as an alarm, not an enemy, through the purification that stripped away hypnosis, bargaining, and a far-off deity, to the principle of God as being, into the doorway of now-time recognition where peace is first and forms follow as effect. Please remember this summation and keep it clean in your heart. We are not changing God. We are changing our consent. We are not training the mind to pretend. We are yielding to presence that already is. Actually, there is no relationship between autosuggestion and realization. They are entirely separate and distinct operations. One manipulates thought. The other beholds being. We choose the latter because only realization gives you something you can count on. Now then, hear a final reassurance, and let it erase the last anxiety. You are not trying to bring God nearer. Oh, no, no, no. Omnipresence cannot draw near. It is fullness. You are consenting to what is already true. The work is not to make God act upon things. The work is to rest in God as the substance of all that looks like health, supply, harmony, peace. God is not a giver of peace, but the very peace. God is not a sender of supply, but the very sufficiency. God is, and that's enough to know. God is, that's all. So let us make this practical, in the rhythm of an ordinary day. Before the problem speaks, yes, before the phone lights with its parade, before the inbox opens its mouth, before the body offers an opinion, take a few seconds and relax both mentally and physically in the assurance. God is here. One breath, softly in here. One breath, gently in is. Do not wait for mood or silence. Do not promise yourself later. Scatter these small returns like seeds. Upon waking, at the threshold of each task, in the pause before answering, in the car at a light, standing at the sink, again at noon, again at dusk. Not long, often. Please remember, we are training attention to take refuge first, so that fear does not appoint itself as your counselor for the day. And as you do this, take your identity with you. You are not an abandoned person seeking rescue. You are in God, and God is within you, available now, not as sentiment, but as presence. Emmanuel, God with us. We are not beggars at a window. We are fellow citizens of the household of God. Therefore, we do not borrow certainty from fear's ledger. We rest in the government of peace. My peace. My peace. Outward harmonies will come in their time, because consciousness cannot abide in light and indefinitely mirror darkness. But the sign you trust first and always is the hush within, the effortless assurance that does not argue and does not time the invisible. Practice these 4 words until they are no longer a phrase you say, but the atmosphere you live in, the silent climate of every room you enter. Let them become less speech and more listening, less effort and more consent. Now, softly, without strain, as benediction. God is here. God is here. God is here. Thank you. Thank you.